essay over the lottery, your symbolism essay, you might want to think about how symbolism and irony are very intertwined in this story. You have a lot of irony in it. So starting with the name of the story, lots of irony there. It's also symbolic. So how is it ironic, the name of the story?
Because it's unlucky.
Right, in this case, it's unlucky. Normally, lottery has a positive connotation, because usually when you hear the word lottery or think of a lottery, you're thinking about winning a car or money or something like that. In this case, in this story, the winner of the lottery is anything but lucky. And they're not going to be winning a car at this lottery. So lots of irony going on there. The names, you've already kind of hit on that, but a lot of the names, there's a lot of irony. Mr. Summers, Mr. Graves, symbolism, irony. The beginning, it's talking about, excuse me, it's taking place in the summer. Again, generally, we know this from our PowerPoint when we were first talking about symbolism. The summer is usually very positive. It's symbolic of being out of school, spending time with your family, and vacations, and this sort of thing. And in fact, if you've never read this story before, the first time you read it, you've never heard about it or seen a movie on it, based on it or anything, when you first start reading it, you might think that based on the first couple of paragraphs, especially the first one, that it's going to be kind of a happy type story, but it's anything but. So lots of irony going on with that. What is the main idea or the teaching moment? I'm not going to say it's the only one. I think there's several, but probably the most important theme, idea, lesson that Shirley Jackson was probably trying to tell readers. What would be the lesson of this story?
Well, not really much. It's just like you get what you get.
Okay, well, that's pretty close. Actually, that's not too far off. What is this a story about? Tradition. That's exactly right. It's a story about tradition. So you have this community, and do you think anybody even knows why they continue to do this very barbaric act every year? Probably not.
Except the old guy.
Well, but does he really know why?
No, he just thinks it's just a tradition and it's bad to change it.
Okay. He does say, lottery in June, corn. He said, you know the old saying, lottery in June, corn be tall soon, or corn be growing soon, or something like that. So that would kind of indicate that maybe this lottery might have started out because maybe this was a farming community at some point. And actually, somebody did point out there evidently still are some families that still farm, because the men are talking about in the kind of the beginning of the story, talking about hope it will be raining soon and they need rain, and talking about tractors and that sort of thing. So it's still implying that it probably, at least some people are still farmers. However, it must also be maybe a mining community, because we know that Mr. Summers owns a coal mine. And so, it's kind of alluding to that maybe the tradition might have started as a way to possibly bless the crops or something like that. This tradition, this ritual of stoning someone once a year. We know that it's been going on for at least how long?
77.
At least 77 years, because Old Man Warner, the oldest person in the community, has been, this is his 77th drawing, by the way. Luck, double seven, 7-7. And he doesn't get picked. Lucky Mr. Old Man Warner. But we know it's been going on at least that long, but more than likely, it's been going on a lot longer than that even. Maybe hundreds of years, a couple 100 years, 100 years, we just don't know, but probably at least 100 or more. So if we know that this is a story about tradition and traditions, then what do you think might be the lesson about traditions? Yeah, not all traditions are good. Or is anybody questioning why they do this barbaric act?
So is it like people follow tradition even if they don't understand it?
That's exactly right. Blindly following tradition. Even if you don't know what it's for, and even if it's something that seems a little off or a little amiss. It might not have seemed strange, off, amiss, maybe when they first started doing it, although I can't imagine in our culture, stoning someone ever being acceptable, except now, back during biblical times and, after that, and even in post-biblical times, we know the Mayans and the Aztecs, we know that they participated in human sacrifices and this sort of thing. I mean, there's evidence of that at least. And so we know there are some cultures and societies that do or have, or they don't still do that, that did participate in that kind of thing, even though it is very barbaric. And I guess there are still places in the Middle East. I know there was in Iran, there's a story, it's very disturbing. I can't think of the name of it now. It came out about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a foreign movie. But it was the stoning of someone, and it was a woman, and she was supposedly, she was accused, she was Iranian, lived in Iran, and she was accused of infidelity. And evidently, she really had not been unfaithful to her husband, but it was more of a situation that he wanted out of the marriage, or he wanted to be able to marry someone else, someone much younger. And so they don't, divorce over there. And in that culture, in that, Islam doesn't allow divorce. Well, actually, I think a man can divorce, but it's easier for them just to claim their wife that they want to get rid of was unfaithful to them. And so that is punishable by death. And this woman, and it was based on a true story, and so she was stoned to death. So there are still some cultures that practice this. And so anyway, but not in this country ever, that certainly that I would know of. And so it is very barbaric. It's a tradition that you have to figure that nobody's really ever stepped up and said, you know what, this is just not right. I don't. Now there were murmurings in the crowd about, some of the neighboring communities are talking about stopping the lottery, and of course, old man Warner shoots that down really quick and says, nothing but trouble in that, and can't stop that. So he, can't stop the tradition. So you have this community, they're blindly following a tradition. They're not stopping to question, not really, why they're continuing to do it. They're not putting any type of stop to barbaric ritual. This story was published in 1948. What had happened recently in this country? Well, in the world. In the world. The ending of World War II had taken place probably about 2.5 years or so, 3 years prior to this writing the story. And by the way, Shirley Jackson wrote this story in one morning. One morning. What does that make you think? If somebody wrote something of this magnitude in one morning, why do you think they wrote it so quickly? What might have been going on or happened that would make them write something like this so quickly? Just a short amount of time. Well, I don't think it was probably a true story. I don't think it would have been that, but what?
Something happened to them, like it.
Okay. Or maybe she heard or learned of something. Or, maybe she, found out some information about something or something maybe kind of a little bit similar in some ways that so impacted her that she, felt this need, was emotionally invested in getting this story out, even if it is a piece of fiction. But again, certainly we have some morals to it and some teaching, it's certainly a parable in a lot of ways. But going back to World War II, this probably when she wrote it would have been around the time or not too long, or it wouldn't have been too much before this, that the atrocities of the concentration camps were really becoming known to people. When the war ended and you had the American, Russian, British troops, French, well, French wasn't in there, but anyway, American, Russian, British went into the concentration camps. They had no idea what they were walking into and the atrocities and how many people had actually been and what was happening to them. A lot of people, I think, thought that it was just, even some German people, I think, thought these camps were work camps or maybe POW camps or something like that, and really had no idea what the Third Reich was doing and gassing people and putting them to death and such. It was a different time then. A lot of people didn't even have, in 1945, 46, 47, a lot of people didn't even have TVs. They depended on radio, already having a radio to listen to or find out what was going on in the world and listening to the news. And, especially if you lived in a rural community, you may not have a daily newspaper. You may not have a weekly newspaper. It might be something hit or miss every couple of weeks that you'd be able to find a newspaper at the local store or something and buy one. So it took oftentimes a long time for news to travel, and especially because this happened over there, not here on our home soil. So a lot of these atrocities were becoming known. And this is a story about tradition and blindly following the tradition, not questioning it, not trying to stop it in any way. How do you think that might relate to what happened during World War II, especially with the concentration camps and such?
A lot of stuff was like pushed underneath the rug and
Do what now?
a lot of stuff was like hidden and no one really talked about it.
Okay, that is true. That is very true. But what what did the German people do? What did they do?
Take the gas.
Well, they did, but they followed and didn't question. They followed a leadership, a government. Now, I'm not trying to just single out Germans, you don't get me wrong with that, but, and I'm talking about, and I do think that most Germans probably did not know what was actually happening and going on in these camps. I think they just thought they were labor camps, POW camps. They didn't realize that people necessarily were being taken there and killed. But that's the thing, they didn't question. And they blindly followed a leader, even if things seemed a little bit askew. Yeah.
What's a POW?
Prisoner of war. Prisoner of war, yeah. So, in a lot of ways, this kind of parallels maybe some things that occurred during World War II, as far as Germany and that country and following, this leader. And even if things maybe did seem amiss here and there, there was probably a lot of what you just said, maybe not being aware or choosing not to be aware or choosing to look the other way. Your neighbor suddenly goes missing, or the father of these, or the husband of this wife, and 5 little children just suddenly not around anymore. You kind of don't question that. I wonder what happened to Joe over there, or this whole family has just gone missing. I wonder what's happened, because that happens. Jewish families, the Jewish neighborhoods, empty, taken away, and people maybe not questioning what's going on. Something seems amiss here. Something seems wrong.
Hitler did put out that Jews
Yeah.
burned down their own
He did.
town and everything.
He did.
So that's what happened.
Well, there was a lot of, the propaganda, and they had I forget what it's called, crystal knives. pronouncing it correctly, but where this is before the camps and before the war, and where the Nazis went through Jewish neighborhoods and burned down their businesses and smashed in the windows, and they took books that had any kind of anything having to do with anything Jewish or any kind of thinking that didn't meet what the fascists were trying to promote. They took it up and they burned it. So totally took away the Germans' right to free speech, to be able to read what they wanted to. And so you did have that. And so, but again, it is blindly following something that might seem a little bit amiss. It's not necessarily a tradition, but it's following something and not standing up, questioning things, or even trying to put a stop to things. So there's a lot of parallelism, I think, between what probably happened, or at least what Shirley Jackson might have felt like had happened in Germany. And a teaching moment, you don't just follow things that seem amiss, question it. Find out, ask questions, what's going on, this doesn't seem right. That's not the only learning moment or teaching moment rather in this story. I think there's others, but that certainly would be one. If you were going to write choose this story to write your essay over, again, that might be something, you don't have to do it this way, certainly, but that might be something to think about, is how closely symbolism and irony work together in this story, especially in this story. So, just kind of an idea. I think I've already said this, I've had a couple of papers, one was really, really outstanding and good, where somebody took and did a lot of research on last names in this story, and it was really amazing, the things, and obviously so much symbolism going on with it. There's a lot of religious symbolism in this story, and we talked about the black box, the box literally representing death, with the slips of paper, and somebody drawing the one slip with the black dot, white on black, by the way, white slip of paper, a black dot, and literally that's sending them to their death. So it's very much in black, represented death, but it was placed upon a stool. Anybody notice what kind of stool it was placed upon? Huh? Well, it probably would be like that, or very similar, but the stool is three-legged. It's very symbolic. That would certainly represent, you could think of it as representing the Trinity, holiness, Christianity, and so there you got a lot of irony, because what this community is doing with this black box is anything but holy. In fact, it's just the opposite. So things like that, lots of symbolism going on. I would suggest, again, if you're going to write your essay or this, I would get a copy of it. It's easy to find a PDF of it, and I would print it. I just would go through and everything that you see and you think to be symbolic or ironic, if you're going to go that route as well, and really go through and mark up this story, because there is a lot going on, lots of symbolism. Any questions before we leave this story? Okay, let's go on to the chrysanthemums. Yeah. If you will go ahead and just pass up the lottery. Okay, a little bit, we'll get into John Steinbeck, when you get back next week, talk about him a little bit more, but, just to give you a little bit of an idea about him, he is a modern writer. He's from generally the same time period as F. Scott Fitzgerald, William Faulkner, remember, who wrote, The Rose Family? A little bit before Hemingway, he was a little bit older than Hemingway. But he's a modern writer from that time period, American. He grew up and lived most of his life in Salinas, California, which is where this story takes place. And I guess that's all we're going to say about him right now. Yeah. Oh, well, he did write, if you've ever heard of The Grapes of Wrath, great, phenomenal novel. I suggest if you've never read it, that you read it because it's fantastic. He also wrote of Mice and Men, so I think a lot of y'all probably read that maybe as freshmen or something. Did y'all read that? No? Okay. That's probably the grade ahead of y'all then. Maybe the juniors that read it, but anyway, I know some students have read that their freshman year. So anyway, lots of symbolism in this story. This is taking place probably around the Depression. I would say around 1930 or early 1930s. It was published in 1938 or 37. I think this says 1938, but I've read 1937. So anyway, so it would have been prior to that. So I would say around the Depression. What we're going to do, we're going to do something a little bit different. As we're reading this, every time there is something that really is obvious that it's symbolism, I'm going to stamp my foot. Okay? And this is a way for you to start kind of paying attention as you're reading things to it being something symbolic, maybe indicating, or something that indicates deeper meaning, it stands for something else, this sort of thing. So anyway, you might pay attention to that. Also, I'm certainly not going to be catching everything that's in here that's symbolic. And there may be some things that you see as symbolic or representing something that I don't even see it as, or maybe I missed it, So I'm not going to do everything, but things that are pretty important that you might want to kind of clue into and think about how it's symbolic and what it might be representing. And think about the PowerPoint that we watched as well. So a lot of those things are in this story. The high gray flannel fog of winter closed off the Salinas Valley from the sky and from all the rest of the world. On every side, it sat like a lid on the mountains and made of the great valley a closed pot. On the broad, level land floor, the game clouds bit deeply and left the black earth shining like metal where the shares had cut. On the foothill ranches across the Salinas River, the yellow stubble fields seemed to be bathed in pale cold sunshine, but there was no sunshine in the valley now in December. The thick willow scrub along the river flamed with sharp and positive yellow leaves. It was a time of quiet and of waiting. The air was cold and tender. A light wind blew up from the southwest so that the farmers were mildly hopeful of a good rain before long, but fog and rain did not go together. Across the river on Henry Allen's Foothill Ranch, there was little work to be done, for the hay was cut and stored and the orchards were plowed up to receive the rain deeply when it should come. The cattle on the higher slopes were becoming shaggy and rough-coated. Alyssa Allen, working in her flower garden, looked down across the yard and saw Henry, her husband, talking to two men in business suits. The three of them stood by the tractor shed, each man with one foot on the side of the little Ford Sun. They smoked cigarettes and studied the machine as they talked. Alyssa watched them for a moment and then went back to her work. She was 35. Her face was lean and strong and her eyes were as clear as water. Her figure looked blocked and heavy in her gardening costume. A man's black hat pulled down low over her eyes, clodhopper shoes, a figured print dress almost completely covered by a big corduroy apron with 4 big pockets to hold the the trowel and scratcher, the seeds and the knife she worked with. She wore heavy leather gloves to protect her hands while she worked. She was cutting down the old year's chrysanthemum stalks with a pair of short and powerful scissors. She looked down toward the men by the tractor shed now and then. Her face was eager and mature and handsome. Even her work with the scissors was overeager, overpowerful. The chrysanthemum stems seemed too small and easy for her energy. She brushed a cloud of hair out of her eyes with the back of her glove and left a smudge of earth on her cheek in doing so. Behind her stood the neat white farmhouse with red geraniums close banked around it as high as the windows. It was a hard, swept-looking little house with hard, polished windows and a clean mud mat on the front steps. Alyssa cast another glance toward the tractor shed. The strangers were getting into their Ford coupe. She took off a glove and put her strong fingers down into the forest of new green chrysanthemum sprouts that were growing around the old roots. She spread the leaves and looked down among the close-growing stems. No aphids were there, no sow-bugs, no snails or cutworms. Her terrier fingers destroyed such pests before they could get started. Alyssa started at the sound of her husband's voice. He had come near quietly, and he leaned over the wire fence that protected her garden from cattle and dogs and chickens. "At it again," he said. "You've got a strong new crop coming." Alyssa straightened her back and pulled on the gardening glove again. "Yes, they'll be strong this coming year." In her tone and on her face, there was a little smugness. "You've got a gift with things," Henry observed. "Some of those yellow chrysanthemums you had this year were 10 inches across. I wish you'd work out in the orchard and raise some apples that big." Her eyes sharpened. "Maybe I could do it too. I have a gift with things, all right. My mother had it. She could stick anything in the ground and make it grow. She said it was having planter's hands and knew how to do it." "Well, it sure works with flowers," he said. "Henry, who were those men you were talking to?" "Why, sure, that's what I came to tell you. They were from the Western Meat Company. I sold those 30 head of 3-year-old steers. Got nearly my own price, too." "Good," she said. "Good for you." "And I thought," he continued, "I thought how it's Saturday afternoon, we might go to Salinas for dinner in a restaurant, and then to a picture show to celebrate, see." "Good," she repeated. "Yes, that will be good." Henry put on his joking tone. "There's fights tonight. How'd you like to go to the fights?" "Oh, no," she said breathlessly. "No, I wouldn't like fights." "Just fooling, Alyssa." "We'll go to a movie. Let's see, it's 2 now. I'm going to take Scotty and bring down those steers from the hill. It'll take us maybe 2 hours. We'll go in town about 5 and have dinner at the Caminos Hotel. Like that?" "Of course I'll like it. It's good to eat away from home." "All right then, I'll go get up a couple of horses." She said, "I'll have plenty of time to transplant some of these sets, I guess." She heard her husband calling Scotty down by the barn, and a little later she saw the 2 men ride up the pale yellow hillside in search of the steers. There was a little square sandy bed kept for rooting the chrysanthemums. With her trowel, she turned the soil over and over and smoothed it and patted it firm. Then she dug 10 parallel trenches to receive the set. Back at the chrysanthemum bed, she pulled out the little crisp shoots, trimmed off the leaves of each one with her scissors, and laid it on a small, orderly pile. A squeak of wheels and plod of hoofs came from the road. Alyssa looked up. The country road ran along the dense bank of willows and cottonwoods that bordered the river, and up this road came a curious vehicle, curiously drawn. It was an old spring wagon with a round canvas top on it like the cover of a prairie schooner. It was drawn by an old bay horse and a little gray and white burro. A big stubble-bearded man sat between the cover flaps and drove the crawling team. Underneath the wagon, between the hind wheels, a lean and rangy mongrel dog walked sedately. Words were painted on the canvas in clumsy, crooked letters. "Pots, pans, knives, scissors, lawnmowers, fixed." 2 rows of articles and the triumphantly definitive "fixed" below. The black paint had run down in little sharp points beneath each letter. Alyssa, squatting on the ground, wanted to see the crazy, loose-jointed wagon pass by, but it didn't pass. It turned into the farm road in front of her house, crooked old wheels skirling and squeaking. The rangy dog darted from between the wheels and ran ahead. Instantly, the two ranch shepherds flew out at him. Then all three stopped, and with stiff and quivering tails, with taut, straight legs, with ambassadorial dignity, they slowly circled, sniffing daintily. The caravan pulled up to Alyssa's wire fence and stopped. Now the newcomer dog, feeling outnumbered, lowered his tail and retired under the wagon with raised hackles and bared teeth. The man on the wagon seat called out, "That's a bad dog in a fight when he gets started." Alyssa laughed. "I see he is. How soon does he generally get started?" The man caught up her laughter and echoed it heartily. "Sometimes not for weeks and weeks," he said. He climbed stiffly down over the wheel. The horse and the donkey drooped like unwatered flowers. Alyssa saw that he was a big man. Although his hair and beard were graying, he did not look old. His worn black suit was wrinkled and spotted with grease. The laughter had disappeared from his face and eyes the moment his laughing voice ceased. His eyes were dark, and they were full of the brooding that gets in the eyes of teamsters and sailors. The calloused hands he rested on the wire fence were cracked, and every crack was a black line. He took off his battered hat. "I'm off my general road, ma'am," he said. "Does this dirt road cut across the river to the Los Angeles highway?" Alyssa stood up and shoved the thick scissors in her apron pocket. "Well, yes, it does, but it winds around and then fords the river. I don't think your team could pull through the sand." He replied with some asperity. "It might surprise you what these beasts can pull through." "When they get started?" she asked. He smiled for a second. "Yes, when they get started." "Well," said Alyssa, "I think you'll save time if you go back to the Salinas Road and pick up the highway there." He drew a big finger down the chicken wire and made it sing. "I ain't in any hurry, ma'am. I go from Seattle to San Diego and back every year. Takes all my time, about 6 months each way. I aim to follow nice weather." Alyssa took off her gloves and stuffed them in the apron pocket with the scissors. She touched the under edge of her man's hat, searching for fugitive hairs. "That sounds like a nice kind of way to live," she said. He leaned confidentially over the fence. "Maybe you noticed the writing on my wagon. I'm in pots and sharpen knives and scissors. You got any of them things to do?" "Oh, no," she said quickly. "Nothing like that." Her eyes hardened with resistance. "Scissors is the worst thing," he explained. "Most people just ruin scissors trying to sharpen them, but I know how. I got a special tool. It's a little bobbit kind of thing and patented, but it sure does the trick. No, my scissors are all sharp." "All right, then, take a pot," he continued earnestly. "A bent pot or a pot with a hole? I can make it like new, so you don't have to buy no new ones. That's a saving for you." "No," she said shortly. "I tell you, I have nothing like that for you to do." His face fell to an exaggerated sadness. His voice took on a whining undertone. "I ain't had a thing to do today. Maybe I won't have no supper tonight. You see, I'm off my regular road. I know folks on the highway clear from Seattle to San Diego. They say there's things for me to sharpen up because they know I do such a good job and save them money." "I'm sorry," Alyssa said irritably. "I haven't anything for you to do." His eyes left her face and fell to searching the ground. They roamed about until they came to the chrysanthemum bed where she had been working. "What's them plants, ma'am?" The irritation and resistance melted from Alyssa's face. "Oh, those are chrysanthemums, giant whites and yellows. I raise them every year, bigger than anybody around here." "Kind of a long-stemmed flower? Looks like a quick puff of colored smoke?" he asked. "That's it. What a nice way to describe them. They smell kind of bitter. They smell kind of nasty till you get used to them," he said. "It's got a bitter smell," she retorted. "Not nasty at all." He changed his tone quickly. "I like the smell myself." "I had 10-inch blooms this year," she said. The man leaned farther over the fence. "Look, I know a lady down the road a piece has got the nicest garden you ever seen. Got nearly every kind of flower, but no chrysanthemums. Last time I was mending a copper bottom wash tub for her. That's a hard job, but I'll do it good. She said to me, if you ever run across some nice chrysanthemums, I wish you'd try to get me a few seeds. That's what she told me. Alyssa's eyes grew alert and eager. She couldn't have known much about chrysanthemums. You can raise them from seed, but it's much easier to root the little sprouts you see there. Oh, he said, I suppose I can't take none to her then. Why, yes, you can, Alyssa cried. I can put some in damp sand and you can carry them right along with you. They'll take root in the pot if you keep them damp. And then she can transplant them. She'd sure like to have some there. You say they're nice ones? Beautiful, she said. Oh, beautiful. Her eyes shone. She tore off the battered hat lip and shook out her pretty dark hair. I'll put them in a flower pot and you can take them right with you. Come into the yard. While the man came through the picket fence, Alyssa ran excitedly along the geranium-bordered path to the back of the house, and she returned carrying a big red flower pot. The gloves were forgotten now. She kneeled on the ground by the starting bed and dug up the sandy soil with her fingers and scooped it into the bright new flower pot. Then she picked up the little pile of shoots she had prepared. With her strong fingers, she pressed them into the sand and tamped around them with her knuckles. The man stood over her. I'll tell you what to do, she said. You remember so you can tell a lady. Yes, I'll try to remember. Well, look, these will take root in about a month. Then she must set them out about a foot apart in good rich earth, like this, see? She lifted a handful of dark soil for him to look at. They'll grow fast and tall. Now remember this. In July, tell her to cut them down about 8 inches from the ground. Before they bloom? He asked. Yes, before they bloom. Her face was tight with eagerness. They'll grow right up again. About the last of September, the buds will start. She stopped and seemed perplexed. It's the budding that takes the most care, she said hesitantly. I don't know how to tell you. She looked deep into his eyes, searchingly. Her mouth opened a little, and he seemed to be listening. I'll try to tell you, she said. Did you ever hear of planting hands? Can't say I have been. Well, I can only tell you what it feels like. It's like when you're picking off the buds you don't want. Everything goes right down into your fingertips. You watch your fingers work. They do it themselves. You can feel how it is. They pick and pick the buds. They never make a mistake. They're with the plant. Do you see? Your fingers in the plant. You can feel that right up your arm. They know. They never make a mistake. You can feel it. When you're like that, you can't do anything wrong. Do you see that? Can you understand that? She was kneeling on the ground looking up at him. Her breast swelled passionately. The man's eyes narrowed. He looked away self-consciously. Maybe I know, he said. Sometimes in the night in the wagon there, Alyssa's voice grew husky. She broke in on him. I've never lived as you do, but I know what you mean. When the night is dark, while the stars are sharp pointed and there's quiet, you rise up and up. If every pointed star gets driven into your body, it's like that, hot and sharp and lovely. Kneeling there, her hand went out toward his legs and the greasy black trousers. Her hesitant fingers almost touched the cloth. Then her hand dropped to the ground. She crouched low like a fawning dog. He said, it's nice, just like you say, only when you don't have no dinner, it ain't. She stood up then, very straight, and her face was ashamed. She held the flower pot out to him and placed it gently in his arms. Here, put it in your wagon on the seat where you can watch it. Maybe I can find something for you to do. At the back of the house, she dug in the can pile and found 2 old battered aluminum saucepans. She carried them back and gave them to him. Here, maybe you can fix these. His manner changed. He became professional. Good as new, I can fix them. At the back of his wagon, he set a little anvil, and out of an oily toolbox dug a small machine hammer. Alyssa came through the gate to watch him while he pounded out the dents in the kettles. His mouth grew sure and knowing. At a difficult part of the work, he sucked in his underlip. You sleep right in the wagon? Alyssa asked. Right in the wagon, man. Rain or shine, I'm dry as a cow in there. It must be nice, she said. It must be very nice. I wish women could do such things. It ain't the right kind of a life for a woman. Her upper lip raised a little, showing her teeth. How do you know? How can you tell? She said. I don't know, ma'am, he protested. Of course I don't know. Now here's your kettles. You don't have to buy no new ones. How much? Oh, 50 cents will do. I keep my prices down and my work good. That's why I have all them satisfied customers up and down the highway. Alyssa brought him a 50-cent piece from the house and dropped it in his hand. You might be surprised to have a rival sometime. I can sharpen scissors too, and I can beat the dents out of little pots. I could show you what a woman might do. He put his hammer back in the oily box and shoved the little anvil out of sight. It would be a lonely life for a woman, ma'am, and a scary life too, with animals creeping under the wagon all night. He climbed over the simple tree, steadying himself with a hand on the burro's white rump. He settled himself in the seat, picked up the lines. Thank you kindly, ma'am, he said. I'll do like you told me. I'll go back and catch the Salinas Road. Mind, she called. If you're long in getting there, keep the sand down. Sand? Sand? Oh, sure, you mean around the chrysanthemums. Sure I will. He clucked his tongue. The bees leaned luxuriously into their collars. The mongrel dog took his place between the back wheels. The wagon turned and crawled out the entrance road and back the way it had come, along the river. All right, we're going to stop right there. And the stopping point, we will finish it on Monday. Are you seeing a lot of symbolism? There's a lot. The actions of characters, very, very, very symbolic. Yeah, lot of symbolism. Okay, if you will, go ahead and pass those up. I'll take them up. Somebody tell me an example of symbolism you saw in this so far.
The black cat. Wasn't there a black cat?
No.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah,
I heard, yeah, there was a black cat.
The three black cat.
At the beginning.
Yes. What's symbolic about that? Yes. As a matter of fact, well, remind me of that. We'll talk about that. I'll tell you, I just noticed that, like today. It's every time I've heard this story probably 50 times, and that came to me because they're on either side of him, just like Christ on the cross, and the two thieves on either side of him. You think these guys are being honest with him? No. All right, have a great weekend. Great long
Hey there,
weekend.
ma'am,
Yeah.
can you keep a check on my room, so I gotta run to the restroom?
Yeah, sure.
Thank
You're welcome. Good. All right, Andrew, have a good one.
You too.
Hey, aw. I've got something to give you, don't let me forget.
Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you guys are forward. Stand in front of people when they're trying to walk. Okay.
You're welcome.
This is my office. Why would you want to pick those up? Where are these going? Not that one. I don't even like that. It's pretty. Yeah, I'm not talking about after. I think it looks like we're very. I'm still not gonna read it. Oh, I'm not reading it. I can't take it seriously.
Matt. That's on the right line. That's on the right line. Yeah. Because your sister.
Yeah, I'm gonna be too. Yeah. Well, no. That's all right. Okay, everybody ready to do, what are y'all doing today? Writing prompt.
I thought we were watching.
Oh, how quickly we forget our assignments. All right, let's see here. Oh, that, oh my. Mountains of. I just want to get rid of it. See, oh, here's this, I'll bring it to you. Next week.
I said we wait until next week to do this. I mean, we're missing a bunch.
Yeah. Nice try there. Because next week you are gonna have a test, a regular, multiple choice test over romanticism. So anyway, that's probably gonna be on Wednesday. You might wanna look over, you got some time this weekend, got 3 weeks, 3 days. You might want to look over. Yep. You might want to look over, PowerPoints and.
Or we could use like
Yeah, well, yeah, 'cause you can, that whole textual evidence thing to use. You can write if you want, you can write, there's paper up here. There's paper up here, you can write it, you can type it, just make sure you got your computer or Chromebook, if you don't have anything but a Word document, open it up. Everybody get one? Why did you?
like.
Yep.
I know we've done this several times, but what is writing prompt exactly? I'm gonna write like about the, I always forget. I always do good on them. I like that.
I'm sure.
What Andrew was?
Answer the prompt, answer the question.
But there are no questions. Okay, my bad. My bad.
Alright. Now, prompts. Even though they didn't put the prompt up. Make sure that you introduce your text and you wrote it. Use textual evidence. You can just put in, if you want to, you can just put in a in-text citation or whatever's fine. No matter which text you're talking about. Yeah.
Would you rather us have, like for the in-text citation, just what story is?
You could do that, you could put Young Goodman 3 or something, or Young 3, you don't even have to put the whole thing, just so I can tell what page, and you can count them, if there's not a page number, I don't really remember, there is not, but you can just count, which page it is fine.